we have a panel on empowered product teams. So I did try and do that to get more people to come here, but it's obviously lunchtime, so we'll work away. So we don't actually have the people that were on the screen because Eilish was struck down by COVID, so hopefully she's okay. But we do have a larger panel now. So we have Nick Peasant from ScreenCloud. We have Stephen Stephen McComb from Signified, and we have Alison from Aflac and Dawn Bell from Bizarre Voice. So do you want to just do a quick intro? Nick, can you start off and we'll go down to the line?
Yep, I hope this is working. Yeah, so I'm Nick, VP of Product at ScreenCloud. Sorry.
But you set the tone well, so thanks. I'm Stephen. I'm a product manager at Signified. I used to be a developer, so technical background a little bit.
I'm Alison. I'm the PO for our Max product at Aflac, which is our policyholders. We've about 1 million users on it at the moment, so yeah, it's quite an interesting product to work on. And I have a very wobbly seat.
Giving me the fear. I'm Dawn. As Graham said, I'm one of the group product managers at Bizarre Voice, and the product that I work on mainly helps our users manage their user-generated content. Previously at Allstate, working in the Compose Lab.
Great stuff. So the reason why we looked at this talk was Belfast is it's an engineering city. So and we have a lot of FDIs that come over and they establish engineering hubs. And they don't always bring the product capability immediately to Belfast. That normally comes later. So we're probably a little bit behind the curve compared to some other cities. So I just want to start off to understand if each of you could just talk about how your product teams are set up in terms of organizationally.
So ScreenCloud's quite interesting actually. We have 4 different hubs, one in Belfast, one in London, one in LA, and one in Bangkok. The two big product and engineering hubs are Belfast and Bangkok. So we have about 30 people in each different hub. We have 2 product managers and 2 designers in Belfast, and 4 product managers and 2 designers in Bangkok. And I report into the CTO, who's based in Bangkok.
Yeah, and we're not too dissimilar in Signified. We're split across the US, mainly in San Jose, and then in Belfast as well. In the interest of trying to be a bit more of a product organization, though, the teams would be co-located. So the product managers in Belfast have product teams and all the resources that they need in Belfast, and vice versa for the US as well. We also have a product manager per team as well, so we're trying to keep that 1-to-1 model. Then we sort of have a group and a sort of director that would sit above that, but it's a typical sort of structure of product teams.
In Aflac, we have Aflac in Northern Ireland, and then there's the Aflac US team. Some of the products that we work on in Northern Ireland are split across both the US and here. And so in that case, we often will have 2 product owners across the teams in the US and Northern Ireland, which is quite an interesting concept. You know, a lot of the product owners in the US have come from the business and would be SMEs, really. In Northern Ireland, I suppose the key, we're set up slightly differently and have a real product focus. We have a lot of a cross-product team that Graham leads. And we probably think about product in a slightly different way in Northern Ireland when we're trying to drive some of that with our US counterparts as well.
So sort of similar to the rest of the guys here, we are split across Belfast, Austin, and Bangalore for the most part. Similar to what Stephen said, we have a product owner or product manager per team. Some teams have both, so your product manager is kind of managing your 12 to 18 month roadmap and has a very much external focus, whereas your product owner works much more closely with the dev team and they are kind of focused on a 6 to 12 month roadmap. And then you have people like me who do both. I'm the product owner manager for the team, and we have a dedicated product designer, a tech lead, and a development manager. So one of the things that we're really trying to drive in Bizarre Voice is the idea of a product quad or a product trio, depending on the team. team. So really working together, making decisions together, building the team together. And in terms of the I don't know, hierarchical structure, I suppose, is that the term? We have right up to Senior Vice President of Product in Bazaar Voice, which is something that I hadn't experienced before. So from a career path-wise, it's nice to have that kind of structure as well that you can lead into the future.
That's great. So one of the things that for Impart product teams was there's a lot of talk about strategy and vision and objectives, and sometimes they're all used interchangeably, and they kind of mean the same thing, and they often don't mean the same thing at all. So, do any of you use specific frameworks to help like communicate and manage your strategy? So, Donald, I'll come to you for that.
Yeah. So in Bazaar Voice, we are kind of split into portfolios depending on where your product sits. My product is part of the client tools portfolio. We also have consumer experience and content generation. And then each portfolio will have a set of objectives and key results, which then feeds down into the product team's objectives and key results as well. So I'll use my own team as an example. So we kind of work in 12-week PIs, planning increments as we call them, and for a particular PI you'll have your objective overall and then your key results underneath that. So all of the work that we do within the PI is tied back to how kind of we achieve and measure those objectives and key results, be it a technical one or a customer facing one or an income based one or something like that.
And Stephen?
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to that. We definitely use the OKR model. At the start of the year, we typically have what we call pillars, and it's a very sort of high-level goals for the company that we want to achieve. Pretty much that's the only sort of direction that we get, which is great for our product team. We then identify problems that can map up and add value or solve pain points that will address that. We have quarterly planning, so hopefully the quarterly plan can stick to the course, but we're not tied into that. If we have an enterprise ask that comes in, or if the world goes on fire, we can sort of pivot onto that. But that's the sort of main direction that we get. It would be our pillars, and then our OKRs would filter down from that. And so long as it's really filtering up towards those pillars, unless the pillars change, we pretty much have free rein to do what we want.
So with that in mind, are your teams like given solutions to build? Are they given problems to solve? Are they tasked with coming up, with determining what the real problem is themselves?
We're giving a rather high-level company goal. So, for example, one would be to grow EMEA by X%. And then from that, I guess that is the problem statement, is how do we grow EMEA by X%? And then from that, each product team then can come up with or identify problems or identify solutions if you want, but essentially we're trying to find what's our blockers to us achieving that, and that's the problem, and then we then work as a team to then try and sort of solve that or find problems and hopefully solutions that will address that. But it's a rather high-level statements that are essentially our problem statement.
Okay, and Nick, obviously Screen Cloud is growing. You've established a new base in Belfast. Does that offer challenges, opportunities around objectives and how to keep everyone towards the same strategy?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've been in Belfast for about just over 2 years now. I think when the company was set up, there was such rapid growth with Screen Cloud that from a strategic point of view, there was no real strategy apart from just surfing the kind of product market fit wave, I guess. And we've got to a point now where we are starting to adopt frameworks. We're using OKRs, which we're getting better and better at every quarter, which is a challenge, right? No one's any good. No one's good at OKRs as a startup. So it's been going on for probably about a year now. We're slowly getting the hang of it. I think the biggest change very recently is where we set key product outcomes as a product team. So in the product, what product behaviors do we really want to start to see in the segments of areas that we want to kind of go after? And so setting those product outcomes as a team has allowed then, and this is very only early days, but it's allowed the teams to suddenly understand, okay, well, what behaviors are we looking for in the product? And then what's going to kind of, what's going to push towards that? So I would be very honest and say, up until this point, as a team, we've been working feature after feature, but as we're getting more mature as a product organization, engineering, we're starting to see, okay, well, there's different ways of achieving these product outcomes, and how we do that as a team is good. And working across Belfast and Bangkok comes with its challenges. I'm looking at Michael. But yeah, the product outcomes are our kind of, I guess, guiding light.
Great, thanks. And Alison, we're talking about like I think you have an example around the team selecting, trying to determine what problem to solve rather than be given the problem.
Yeah, so at AFLAC, we've probably inherited a lot of OKRs and pillars as a kind of method. But I think in ANI, in AFLAC Northern Ireland, we were very fortunate as a team, as a cross-product team, to be able to present to our CIO quite recently. And I think what we did was we presented something in a different way and told a different story than he was used to hearing, because he was used to hearing from particular siloed kind of groups. And we were able to tell a joint story of a single sort of North Star right across the products. So actually going, as a full team, going and saying, well, look, actually, what's the key indicator? What's the key thing that can really move the needle in our company and what we can deliver? And I think it was something that he hadn't maybe encountered before, because it was this, look, here's actually the North Star that we think every team right across our group can actually adhere to and can drive some value in, and we can then set our metrics within the teams underneath that key North Star. And it was something I think that he really sort of bought into, and I think it was sort of, rather than having lots and lots of OKRs, it was like, actually, here's the one thing that we can all work towards and agree, and then plan as a single roadmap, as a whole product team, as opposed to individual products. So it was something new, I think, that hopefully we will be driving towards more.
I think the bit that's interesting from us is that we're starting to see other teams in the company setting OKRs that have a direct impact on the product team as well. So more recently, we've kind of been getting together as a leadership team to align on some very, very top-level objectives that then we all understand the kind of dependencies across the teams. Because what was happening was customer success were pushing in one direction, they needed product work in another direction. It was kind of
Yeah, and for us, I think it's also joining up the metrics that are coming in, from different teams. It's actually going, look, actually, how do we really measure success, and what is that really going to look like, and how what do those metrics look like at a team level, but also then as a full company? And actually, is there, within that North Star, is there one key metric that we can really drive towards and agree right across all the product teams?
Yeah, you can often have conflicting metrics, so we had an example looking at claims and the call center, and just one, if we focused on one activity, we were actually either going to reduce the overhead on the call center, but we were just going to push the engagement elsewhere down the funnel. And I think that's the thing about the OKRs, about if they're not transparent across all of the teams, you don't necessarily know how everyone's being incentivized in that kind of way. Dawn, I wanted to talk about discovery in terms of like engineers and QA talking to users directly. And I know that you do that at Bazaar Voice.
Yeah, so kind of tying it into the OKR model that I discussed there, as much as we have OKRs and stuff, how we solve things is very much up to us. And I would say that in the product that I'm working on at the moment, it's evolving all the time, and it's in flux constantly. So one of the things that we're really striving to do at the moment is to combine two experiences into one new app. And we have launched a pilot app of it. And I'll be really honest, the uptake of it's pretty shit. So we're trying to figure out why. And this week we've spent time speaking to clients and saying, well, we're trying to launch this. You've told us that this is what you want, but why are you not using it? And one of the really kind of aha moments that we had this week, so myself and the QA met with the client, and she says, well, I'm not using it because I can't navigate back. So it's just one of those things where you just think, oh, yep, we're done, it's ready to go. And then you speak to a user and you're like, how did I miss that? So one of the things that I love that we use a lot in Bazaar Voice that I probably haven't had as much kind of observability exposure, we use a lot of Full Story and Pendo. So Full Story is letting us actually watch the user use our app. And another one from last night, I shared the Full Story session in our team channel this morning, and as soon as I came into the office, the developer's like, oh my God, did you see this? Did you see that? We should really do X, Y, Z. And it's like, that's why we do this. That's why these tools are so useful. So yeah, like we've a really open door policy, I suppose. You know, for myself as the product manager, I would never say, oh no, you can't go to this meeting, that's only me. You know, the more the merrier, and certainly if they're not available to make it, then I'll share the session or share the recording after. But I think that sometimes as a product person, you can feel like you're the person that everyone's looking at for what's the answer, what is the thing we should build, and more often than not, you're going to get better answers from the people that you work with than yourself in a silo.
Just to sort of add that, it's definitely a sort of balancing act, because I know that you don't want to create noise for the team. If you pull in the whole team, it's a very wasteful exercise to have start counting up all the salaries that are all in a meeting. It's a very expensive meeting to do discovery, and people are just passive. It's maybe not the best use of time. So, but that being said, if you're missing out because of someone's input, and I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer there in terms of what you do, and you maybe just have a gut feel for when you need to pull in the whole team, how you can communicate that to the team when you need to. So
I think that's it. It's balance, as you say. You know, like we're not going to have everybody in every single meeting, but you know, as we've like learned over the past 2 years or however long COVID has lasted now, when you are in a room like this week, like we have spent time in rooms with post-its on walls, and it's like, wow, remember when we used to do this every day? But there's a time and a place, I think, is what you're saying, Stephen, for bringing everyone in. The product that I have at the moment has, I've inherited it from someone in the room, and there's a defined roadmap. But I feel like I am empowered and the team are empowered to say constantly, much to the displeasure of some of the engineers, well, who says we have to do that next? Why is that? But that's where the benefit of everybody being in the room and kind of voicing their own ideas, that's where it's the magic happens.
I think also it depends where your team's at. You know, so for us in our Max team, it's quite a new team, and people new into the business, we don't necessarily understand that insurance business the way other people in the States do. So what we've organised is actually just for our whole team, everybody, UX, QAs, developers, to sit in the contact centre listening on calls for the next couple of weeks. And I think that is something, that is of massive value to really, for everybody in your team to understand the customer and what the requirements are, and not be waiting to hear it sort of several, like sort of Chinese whispers, where somebody manages to kind of tell them, I think this is what the customer needs, but actually hear it from them themselves. I would expect we're going to have very different conversations around some of the things we're trying to build because of what they're listening to in those call centres.
I was going to say that just because I think that the sort of cliche interpretation of a product owner or product manager being the voice of the customer, I think it can be taken very literal, and you hold all the keys to the kingdom, you hold all the access to the customer. I think that's just asking for trouble as a bottleneck, and as like you say, being passed down multiple layers. I think you're right. It depends on the stage and the maturity of the team as well.
Can I have a show of hands of who actually in their teams have with their engineers, QAs, everyone talking to users? Okay. Well done. I think one of the things about the discovery piece and having everyone involved in the discovery piece is, there is a train of thought that it actually reduces the risk in delivery, and the reason for that is one of the challenges if it's just the product and maybe UX or design doing discovery, then what happens in the delivery? There's lots of questions that have to go to the product person because other people haven't been in that conversation. So then the product person is brought from doing some discovery efforts more so into delivery. So it's kind of that kind of balancing act, the idea of that, that'll be lean in discovery, but it's actually not, because it's going to cause problems in delivery. And I think that's something that we don't really do, because the challenge is how to get started, right? So, Nick, have you any tips on how to get started? Because obviously we didn't have a huge show of hands there. Have you any tips on how teams can get started in having everyone talking to users directly?
Well, just from our experience, we follow the Basecamp 6-week cycle process. So at the moment, every 6 weeks, we have a separate shaping team that's made up of product managers, designers, and engineers who ultimately shape and look at the problem and work together. Now, I'll be honest, sometimes that is predominantly product management and design, but we do try and get engineering involved in that process as much as we can, and we do work to do that. And I think in terms of getting in front of the customer, we can like monitor with ScreenCloud. It's a different one where we can monitor the usage of the platform, but really screens like this, we need to be at the actual locations to see if those screens are actually on and playing. So that's made it really difficult over the past couple of years because we've not been able to do that. So actually, events like this are great to actually see screens are actually working if they're in on ScreenCloud. But yeah, I guess it's just for us, it's a 6-week cycle process. And I guess coming back to the product outcomes, it's making sure that everyone understands the direction so they can feel like they want to get involved with that conversation, so it's not a big jump for them. But we are getting better at it. Not perfect.
I think it comes back to something that Stephen said earlier about balance as well. You know, for instance, I've met with clients this week, and instead of bringing like 20 people with me to meet this one person from a client company, I've recorded the session and shared it. But I think like from a getting started perspective, that's very much where I am. Like the product that I'm in, I've been in for 6 or 7 weeks. And as with like a lot of kind of how I work, I suppose it's about seeking forgiveness and not asking permission all the time. And I think in Bazaar Voice, historically, our salespeople have been the keeper to the keys to the kingdom for the clients. So at the moment, I'm kind of treading softly with, by the way, I'm going to do this, and maybe inviting people along as optional, but just going myself and but setting up the meetings myself and speaking to them and bringing whoever wants to come along with me.
That is a good point. Like we the salespeople are on the front line, and we started recording all their calls through Chorus, so that every sales call now is shared with the team. So that's had a massive impact on actually listening back to how they're selling the product. But also, that's had a big impact on the actual product team to listen to those calls and listen to what's actually been said. And that's kind of the next best thing, right?
Sort of slightly off topic, but I'm sort of curious, has that had any other sort of detrimental effect to sales team feeling like they're being monitored, or maybe not? Has there been a drop in?
Yeah, it did actually start off like that, where a lot of calls weren't actually recorded. But I think now it's just baked into the culture, and I think it's also had a really good impact on how they're demoing the product. They actually know they're being recorded, and everyone has to demo the products in the company, so it's not just sales, but it's had a big impact on understanding what sales actually have to go through in the calls, because it's quite repetitive, and there's a lot to be said for doing those calls every day, but for the company it's been a massive impact on.
I don't think there's anything more insightful than being with sales and seeing how they sell your product, because then you actually realize what the value proposition really is, not what you think it is as a product and engineering team. What he kind of talked about there, you know, is that challenge, right, of, you know, well, we want to talk to users directly, and like sometimes within a product and technology organization, you know, you're speaking to the same kind of audience. So, but when you're talking to sales, they can be protective, because they're like, I've built years building these relationships, so to let you into that, and I suppose that's one of the things about in large organizations where you've kind of this business versus digital or old school IT. So to become an empowered product team, and a need to have more ownership of the business model and everything else. So with that in mind, like how do you address that with your more commercial and business teams?
I think like that's something that I definitely feel. Not that kind of IT thing, but definitely that kind of healthy friction between us and sales. And well, don't you talk to my clients because they're my clients. But as well as speaking to clients, something that I have tried is to like build relationship with that customer success manager, demo the product to them, let them ask you questions. To break down that, they're the IT guys kind of thing, because it's not what we are, obviously. But I think treating the whole of the organisation as everybody's a stakeholder to you as a product person or as a product team. So treat them how you would treat any other stakeholder and build those relationships so that they're comfortable with, well, actually, I'm okay with you going and speaking to the client, or let's go together is another thing that I'm doing quite a lot at the minute. So stakeholder management 101 really, isn't it?
I would probably add to that and sort of paraphrase probably something in Marty Kagan's book is about, we should really all shift that mindset to be we're all tech companies, whether or not we want to believe it or not. If you don't consider yourself being a tech company, you're just going to be eaten by the competitors. And previously coming from a bank as well, where they very much did not consider themselves they were a bank that also had IT as a service, and there's unsurprising the bank moves like a tankard, and there's these sort of like there's Monzo, Starling, they are tech companies first who happen to do banking, and that's a subtle rephrasing, but it's a big mindset shift, and I think that helps to get the whole buy-in from senior leadership, executives, the whole way through the team, not just IT working pretty hopelessly by themselves, because there's only so much they can do if the rest of the company don't think of themselves as being a tech company.
I think there's two things that you really need to consider. First of all, is understanding where you are as a company on that digital transformation curve. And if you're working with the business team, and most of the people in the business remember internal IT was two men and a wee lad in a room somewhere who kind of turn things on and off again. Like, why should they now trust that suddenly the digital team understand the product and understand the business problems? So I think it's about building trust across both those teams, and part of actually the second thing is then understanding that as the technology side, that actually you have to be able to speak business teams' language. So you don't go to them and say, here's all the stuff that we can build, and here's all the technology, and here's some cool stuff. It's actually a conversation about what are the business problems that they're facing, and how can we actually answer them, and how can we, really having that conversation, and then being able to go away and go, well, here's some solutions to solving your problem. And they don't really need to care then about actually how we do it. And I think that's where we get the ownership around the actual how we do it. But we, first of all, really need to work together to understand the what and the why around that, and then make sure that when we're working with our team, that why doesn't get lost in the middle of the technology. Because sometimes the translation, again, it's coming down through, your team really need to understand the kernel of what is the problem we're trying to solve here. And actually, when we build this thing and design it, is it still solving the initial problem? Sorry, it's definitely a wobbly say. Is it still solving that problem? Because if we don't, I've seen so many times where we actually lose the kernel of the issue that we were trying to solve in the first place.
I think as well, for me, it's been a really good test of my communication skills. I feel like you can present a deck of your roadmap or whatever you're trying to do or how your product works, but then when you hear that fed back to you, you said such and such the other day in a meeting, you're like, that's absolutely not what I said. So I've had a couple of calls this week. I had kind of like a panicked customer success manager yesterday. Oh, I'm meeting with this big client, and you've told me that you're launching this new product. So when are you getting rid of my old one? And I'm like, I'm not. Did I not say that? So it's like hearing yourself back, so that you're readjusting your communication to suit the audience that you're speaking to sometimes.
That's a really interesting point. Sometimes hearing yourself back isn't always the nicest thing in the world. It's like when you hear your kids speaking back to you, and you can hear your partner. But I think one of the things you sort of said there, Don, about that stakeholder 101 is making sure that those business stakeholders, that their subject matter expertise and domain expertise is valued. That you're not, especially you know, if you're working in a newer domain, you haven't been there long, you're never really going to achieve the deep domain expertise that they have. And sometimes we forget that we should let the people know that we value that they know a lot more about that domain than we do, and we sometimes forget that. So with this idea in mind of doing discovery and, you know, bringing all your team with you, how do you get started? Like, how do you convince other parts of the business that might be like saying, well, do you know what? Your velocity was X and we have these milestones that we need to hit. How do you actually get started to try and convince your teams on that? I'll come to you, Nick.
So you mean engineering, customer success? You know?
And I suppose as well your commercial teams as well, because they may be used to a certain cadence of delivering features.
Yep.
And you're maybe trying to reduce the work in progress.
Yeah, so I think just talking about the journey ScreenCloud's been through, we've only recently kind of really distinguished the different sectors or segments of customers that we're actually aiming for or kind of going after. I think before that, with digital signage, it could be we have kind of thousands of customers from Coca-Cola managing it in their offices to the local kebab shop putting a menu up on screen. So designing product or guiding product through that is quite difficult, and when the different teams are coming to you and sales are actually speaking to totally different customers at every single call, they're going to come to you with different requests and different priorities because the company's just not joined up. So only recently we've kind of defined some key segments. Now all the company are aligned behind them. And what's starting to happen is we're starting to see some patterns of feature requests, pains, kind of needs, desires that are coming through that we're starting to see patterns of. So from a product team point of view, that's gold now. I can start to see a kind of a guiding light. So as a company, that's how we've tried to align everyone. And that's really come from the top down in terms of, so that's really helped us as a product team and made sure every team's kind of stayed aligned, but it's still very new.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I'd just sort of add that I think just being super transparent and working on that sort of communication, that nothing's hidden. You don't have to go through layers to find out what that message is. But to answer your question, Graham, about how to get people on board, I think definitely there's an element of stakeholder management that you mentioned, Don, and you're a bit of a sort of politician. You really kind of need to win people over, and I think the best way to do that is to get quick wins on the board quite early, and that's something that I've used and done quite well by just demonstrating the value that you can provide, that your team can provide, and sort of show this is what we're trying to achieve, win them over, whether being letting an account manager give you access to a customer or just winning over that trust by, you know, we're on the same team, we're trying to achieve the same thing. So I think that goes a long way to get people on board. Hope that wasn't me.
No, don't think I was. Well, I think that's us for now. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and you can all go for your lunch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.